In 2009, during the ashes of the Great Depression, a rebellion was born. They called it FIRE, financial independence, retire early. People didn't want Lamborghinis. They wanted time, save 70%, live cheap, invest in index funds, and escape the system that broke them. But then the math changed. Costs rose and markets shifted. Social media turned the FIRE movement from freedom into a performance. Today, most people don't want to quit work, they just want control. The FIRE movement didn't die, it just evolved. Because freedom isn't retiring early, it's living with purpose. So maybe financial independence wasn't the finish line. Maybe it was just the start. So with that being said, let's get right into today's episode.
In this episode, we dig into the question many are quietly wondering in 2025. Is the dream of financial independence still alive? Or has it lost all relevance? From the rise of the FIRE movement after the 2008 crash, to the realities of inflation, housing costs, and lifestyle expectations today, we're going to unpack the definition of freedom in a rapidly shifting world of money. We're also going to explore whether the pursuit of financial independence has become more realistic or unrealistic with this new generation. But before we get into that, I want to go ahead and get back to when the FIRE movement got started back in 2009. Dominic, I know you were probably pretty young back then, maybe in high school?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What'd you know about that?
Oh man, 2009, that was a rough time in our culture, in our American way of life. You know, right after the collapse of some financial institutions, and a little bit of a dark period for my family, actually. So that time was dark. It was not a great time, but that was the birth of the FIRE movement. Granted, I didn't have to bear a lot of that load, being that I was in high school, thankfully. But I've now come to learn what the FIRE movement is through your teachings and some of the books you've recommended. And I'm excited to honestly get into the details of it and really share it with the community, as how it inspired me. I hope that it inspires others to really choose a different path. And like you said, it's all about living deliberately. And that's an exciting way to live rather than doing what you're told and dying at 80 and then regretting your whole life. So I'm excited about today. And yeah, let's keep it going.
For sure. So the Great Recession, the housing collapse of 2008 really sparked a lot of distrust in traditional financial systems, the systems that we all came to rely on and think that, oh, these are the good guys. They're here to help us. So what that ended up prompting with, I wouldn't say the advent of the internet, but the advent of blogs, Mr. Money Mustache, Early Retirement Extreme, and J.L. Collins' book, A Simple Path to Wealth, became the blueprints to a new lifestyle, a new type of lifestyle. Retiring early in order to live a life of intention. And we called that the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. And I believe that most people, they focused on that retire early, not the financial independence. And I think that's what the next evolution of what we're trying to bring to the financial independence movement is trying to say retiring early, that's all well and good, but that's not the point. The point is to live deliberately. Because the idea back then was simple. If you're able to save 50 to 70% of your income, live extremely lean, use index funds until your portfolio has a substantial wealth, then you can call yourself FIRE, and then you don't have to do anything you don't want to do ever again. And that sounds well and good, but then people are running away from something rather than towards something. So that's what we're trying to change nowadays.
Interesting. I think that's a really interesting note that you said. Most people focus on the RE, right? FIRE, the retire early portion. Everybody wants to retire early, but not enough of us focus on the financial independence part. And I think that is what's most interesting, because everybody should have, right? A retirement account, all these different financial instruments to, prepare them for retirement. But not many of us really plan for speeding that up and becoming independent from the income streams that we might have, right? We might only have one or two income streams. If you're in today's world with the gig economy, you might have more. But no, I think that's an interesting point that most people never even focus on the first part of that.
Yeah. And I want to bring it back to when the FIRE movement did get started, it was born out of frustration, not out of greed, not out of saying like, I want to have more than everyone else. Because people who pursued FIRE back then, they weren't looking for Lamborghinis. What they really wanted was time. They wanted that financial dependence, but everyone focused on the retire early. And what that ended up creating was this counterculture movement. that was trying to say, how much can I deprive myself in order to be free? And we kind of, everyone kind of loses the balance, right? Of being able to both save for tomorrow and live for today. Because back then, the math actually kind of worked. We had low costs in terms of being able to get housing, stores, everything like that was cheaper. We had a strong stock market that was starting to come back, and we had cheap index funds. But what happened over the subsequent 15 years is the math has changed. And with that change, that prompts us to ask the question, is financial independence, is the FIRE movement dead? So I think we need to next talk about what's the emotional pulse of the financial independence community in 2025. Dominic, we've been doing this for about 2 years now. What do you kind of think? I mean, think back to our Five Friday feedbacks, viewer mailbags. What do you think people are feeling when it comes to the thought, I can do this myself. I can be financially independent. I can change the trajectory not only for myself, but for generations to come in my family.
Yeah, it seems like even though we have the most information now, people still feel more lost than ever. It's almost like an information overload. And a lot of the times, what you see is a lot of crowd mentality in the viewer mailbags of, well, my friends are telling me to do this, or I feel left out because they're doing that. And a lot of the fire movement, what seems to me, is charting your own path. Because let's be honest, as great as this fire movement is, and it is a great one, it's not adopted from the masses, right? In fact, would you say it's almost the complete opposite, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I would say maybe 0.2%, maybe 1% of people are gonna try to adopt this lifestyle. It's not normal. It's completely abnormal.
And it's not easy. And
No.
that's why it's not normal. It's because it's not easy. And everybody, it's so easy. This is what I've been kind of learning more in my own personal life is how easy it is to go to work every day and not look for new jobs, not try and push yourself, not try like you get comfortable. You get very comfortable. And the fire movement is almost the opposite of that. It's like, hey, we're going to light a fire underneath us because we would like to retire at 30, 40, or whatever your goal is, 50, whatever, right? By choice. But it seems like a lot of us are living in comfort, and that's so easy to do, right? You might be listening to this podcast on the couch, right? Maybe you are. Maybe that's cool. Maybe you're on a walk. I love that. But the fire movement is about choice at the end of the day. And it's the choices that we make. That's what turns into the life we have. And if you don't like the life you have to study the choices you make. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to be better at this week. It's part of my win of the week, actually, for next week or on Friday. But how do we start, though? For the person who's never seen fire, they don't know anything about it. They're just learning about where it's coming from. And honestly, the rebirth of fire, because people today are getting more and more fed up with the government, with the greed in this country, and they're ready to disconnect from it all.
And I think that's an important point to bring up. Now that we're in 2025, things have changed. And I think we should discuss a little bit of what has changed so people can at least have an understanding of that. And then we'll be able to get into, does the math still make sense? Does all of this still make sense? And then what can we do from there?
Yeah.
So I think we can all say that rising costs for living, especially when it comes to housing, has made the numbers for traditional finance much, much harder to hit. I don't think anyone's going to say, no, things are definitely a lot easier than they were back in 2009. And then we also have social media that glamorizes financial independence, retire early. But I think that they distorted the message. They've, like we talked about earlier, talked too much about the retire early, about the glitz, the glamour, about how great it all is, without talking about that it is a sacrifice. Like you said, the easier choice is just to work for 50 years and then, hopefully get a pension, which you're not going to get, hopefully have enough retirement to retire on, and then just live the rest of your life as a greeter at Walmart or something like that. That's not, or just hope that Social Security, that somebody else is going to come down from heaven and save you. And then another thing that we've seen with social media is the pressure to quote unquote retire early adds guilt and additional burnout to people when they feel that they can't keep up with this idealized version of somebody else's life. And it makes many people question whether financial independence is even possible. or if it was only ever realistic to high income earners back in 2009. Tech bros making $200,000, $300,000 who could easily save 50% of their income because they had no dependence, no anything. So we need to ask ourselves, was financial independence, retire early, supposed to be about creating freedom? Because nowadays it seems to be creating just more anxiety. And I can see that in every single one of our Five Friday feedbacks over the past few weeks is people are feeling that they're behind, they're behind, they're behind. I mean, shoot, we recently got a 16-year-old who reached out to us saying that I'm not going to come out of this.
It's kind of interesting. The more I've listened to the podcast, the more I've learned from this podcast, the more my mind has shifted. And the more you've kind of opened up my mind and the listener's mind to pattern recognition. Like you always say, this is the one thing that always sticks with me. This too shall pass, right? Everything goes in cycles. At the beginning of the FIRE movement, it was Tech Bro City. They could say, like you said, and save 50% of their income. And the average Joe's like, wow, that must be nice. And then kind of opened up to the masses a little bit. Everybody can do it. This is great. We're all kind of achieving this financial independence, retire early thing. And then costs went up again. And now the people who are new and just discovering it are looking up at the rich and greedy and saying, wow, well, and maybe not rich and greedy, but the better off, right? And they say like, wow, well, yeah, it would be easy for you guys, but now it's not possible for me. But we're coming back into that cycle again where it's about to be great for everybody again. And what I think is so interesting is it's not that it's my belief, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but it's my belief that maybe the market didn't actually change for the people who are normal working people to accept the FIRE movement. Maybe it was just a mindset shift. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
no, I can see that. That could have been it. I mean, that can be it. Who knows? That definitely could be that. But I think that's a good way of looking at it because too many people they blame the outside things. Oh, it's the market, it's the this, it's the that, without looking at themselves first. Whenever you point a finger, there's three fingers pointing back at you. So you need to look at what am I doing in order to not have the life that I want. I think that's a really good transition to make sure that we talk about a reality check. We have to check financial independence math in this new modern lifestyle because the FIRE movement was all based off the Trinity study, the 4% rule. Does that math still work today? And if you haven't heard the 4% rule, that's based off the Trinity study. A few financial advisors came together at Trinity College and they did backlog research to see at what rate can someone withdraw from their portfolio and have a 98% chance of not running out of money in subsequent 30 years. And this was run off of a 60-40 stock to bond portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Most people nowadays say 100% stocks in order to have more money in the market. Now, of course, that's changing. Things are always going to change. So don't think that this is here forever. What they're able to find is if you withdraw 4% of a portfolio, meaning that if you have $1 million portfolio, you can withdraw $40,000 a year. That means you get to have a 98.2% chance of never running out of that money. And the money actually keeps up with inflation. Because in general, inflation is about 3%. That's what the Federal Reserve targets, 2 to 3%. So if we're only 7 minus 4 equals 3. That keeps up with inflation and you get your 4% every year. And that continues to grow. But now we have to ask ourselves with high interest rates are now punishing debt and reward savers for the first time in decades. Does that mean that things have changed for us nowadays? And I think that it does mean that things have changed because as we've seen financial independence evolve, we've also seen new hybrid paths come out. Some hybrid paths that I'm very excited about. For example, CoastFi, BaristaFi, SlowFi are becoming far more realistic tools to achieve financial independence outside of the traditional FIRE movement of you retire at 30 years old, and if you didn't retire by 30, you're a loser. There are so many ways to get there, and they all work to tell someone's in different parts of their life. Because I want to make sure that we understand this, that financial independence is less about quitting and more about control. I would say it's always been more about control and less about quitting. But the internet, people who didn't really understand the movement made it about quitting when that was never the real goal. It was never the intention.
And I think it's important, right? Because I wish we could buy our time, right? Unfortunately, we can't buy any more time, but we can buy back time through smart moves and mastering your hours because the truest freedom is an empty calendar. The option, the ability, the goal of looking at the calendar and having it empty. And that is the real goal right there. And that's what we're all working towards. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think that people need to understand that you don't need 3 million or $30 million to be free. What you need, which financial independence gives you, is the clarity. It gives you the clarity that the math that you were taught back in the day, that didn't die. The thing that changed was your assumptions changed. You believed that you needed more because you saw a society want more and more and more. But the people that choose financial independence, it's about making sure that work is optional, not about never working again. Because in truth, financial independence isn't the finish line, it's your foundation. The financial independence, I'm going to say that again, financial independence movement is not the finish line. It's your foundation for living a life on your own terms. Taking in the tenets of financial independence, understanding all of these things at a high level so that you can know moving forward, this is how I control my life. This is how I control my destiny. Not being subservient to somebody else to be able to live my life.
I think that's really prolific actually. I didn't realize that till just now, kind of when you said it. But you're saying that financial independence is the vehicle to get you to the destination, not the destination.
Yeah.
Hmm, I like that. I like that
Because
a
I
lot.
because I would say I don't know if there is a destination. I mean, we've had so many questions on how much is enough. Like you might have your numbers. You might say, Chris, if I had $1 million, I could pull 40,000. I'd be good. I'd be set forever. Life's gonna happen. Someone's gonna get sick. Something is going to change. Enough is never enough. There's that old quote. I think it was from The Wolf of Wall Street, where they asked like, "How much is enough?" And he said, "Just a little more, more." And that's who we are as people. But you can also decide to not play that game, and that's more of a mindset shift from escape to alignment. Trying to make sure that we know what financial independence really means today. Because I will say that back in 2009, when I kind of discovered this, I probably discovered it in 2014 or 15, it was all about retire early. And I fell on that bandwagon hard because I hated the job that I was at. And I've talked all about that at length in different podcasts so that you guys can learn from me and not live your life so sad and depleted in order just to hit some number in your bank account. Because once you hit that number, nothing changes. The next evolution about financial independence, in my estimation, it's about designing the life that you want, not departing the life that you don't want. It's about aligning our money with our values, not just maximizing our net worth. That's the reason that we talk about your why so often. I mean, we had a meme called "What's your Wi-Fi? What's your why for fi?" We did that for a while. We got away from it. Maybe we'll bring it back at some point. But the goal of financial independence should be about optionality. And that optionality can mean time, location, purpose, flexibility, being able to do what we want to do, not to have to go to jobs that we hate in order to keep a paycheck so we can buy things that we don't really care about that hamstring us harder to the job that we hate in the first place. We have to buy the things to feel good about because the ultimate wealth is freedom to choose how you spend your days and who you spend it with.
I want to go back real quick to something you said a little bit ago. And you said that at the beginning, when you started this journey, right, you had a number in mind. A couple years down the line, you worked hard, you did everything you were supposed to do, you hit that number. And the sun came up the next day, the moon came up, right? The everything kept spinning, everything was the same. Nothing really changed. And I'm wondering because I'm trying to think of what would the viewer think, right? Because I'm sure, I mean, you were them. You were in them. Like that's what they think, right? Well, I must be a number. It must be like we talked about 1 million or 2 million or 3 million, 10 million, right? Must be a number. Can the goal ever be a number? Or will that only be a checkpoint?
I think it's just a checkpoint because at the end of the day, people assign the number hoping that that'll give them the feeling that they're looking for. And there's something that we know about feelings that they're fleeting. You might hit the number and have the feeling of like joy for a moment. But that feeling of joy isn't going to stay there indefinitely. It'll be there for maybe an hour, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 10 days. But then, due to the way that our brains hedonically adapt, it's called the hedonic treadmill, we go back to our baseline set point. And now, whatever we finally have acquired just becomes normal. And listeners, I mean, you can think back into your own times, Dom, when you were in elementary school. You're like, man, the moment I get to middle school, smooth sailing. You get to middle school, you're like, okay, maybe not that. High school, after that, graduate, okay, college, my first job, my second job, this next promotion. We've always put the goalpost a little bit farther, and that's worked for us evolutionarily. It's kept us moving as a species. The thing that makes humanity humanity is that we are constantly building better things. We just want more progress. Even if what we have is perfect, we're like, no, it's not enough though. I want more, I want more, I want more. It keeps us alive. It does. And it can be our greatest detriment. And you can say that that's evolution's fault, that's whatever's fault, or you can decide, hey, there's a program running in my brain that tells me that I don't have enough when I clearly do. Rather than taking that program that's saying this is truth, I get to ask it, is that true? Do I not actually have enough or do I have more than enough? And I'm looking at it all the wrong way because I'm comparing myself to somebody else who has no aspect of my life. And I only am comparing my insides to what their perfectly curated outsides are.
I hope this is inspiring you guys as much as it's inspiring me. I really hope so. Right? If it is, please leave a comment right now. Tell us if this is the first time you ever heard about fire. Is this the second time? Maybe this is something that you heard many years ago and kind of didn't really stick, but now it is. We would love to hear all about your guys' journey down in the comments. But yeah, let's keep it going, Chris.
Yeah. So before we move on to the future of FIRE, I just want to make sure that it's clear that I'll call it FIRE 1.0. It was about escaping work. The 2009, after the Great Recession, it was about not working anymore. That was the goal. And everyone said, once you get there, like that's the end. Like you've reached the finish line. You get to live your perfect life for the rest of your life. You get your happily ever after, right? Just like the Disney movies. They ended happily ever after. But then you go and you watch Shrek or something like that and you realize like, oh, happily ever after wasn't all that happy. Like they still had life that had to go on and it was difficult and tough. So what I'll call FI 2.0, it's about designing work that fits you. It's about designing life that fits you. Because freedom isn't the absence of work. It's about persistent meaning in your life to design a life that you really want. Because the pursuit of financial independence should never feel like a punishment. Maybe it feels like a punishment for a little bit while you're kind of cutting back. Okay. But you're knowing that you're doing it in service of something greater. Because you don't need to hate your job to want to be financially independent. In fact, I would say if you hate your job and you're thinking that I was financially independent, I'd finally be happy. That's not going to work. Because what people really want is they want the freedom to choose. How nice would it be? Because I've met so many people who have said, oh, Chris, I don't want to be financially independent because I love my job. And that's wonderful. But are you really telling me that of all of the infinite number of things you could do with your life, you would choose to go to your job every single day? And if you are that person, you're saying, yes, Chris, I would do it no matter what. Good for you. Keep doing it. And when things change, wouldn't it be nice to have the ability to make that pivot? That's what financial independence gives you. Optionality, flexibility.
So, what were some of the books that kind of shaped how you got to this moment, Chris?
I think I mentioned one earlier. It's J.L. Collins' A Simple Path to Wealth was a really big one for me. There's another big one which has nothing to do with finance, but it was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Just having to realize that you can't blame other people. You have to figure it out for yourself. There's another book, Mindset by Carol Dweck, that changed a lot of the way I looked at things. But it's funny that a lot of the books that I read on finance didn't really help me as much as books about your mindset, about being a better person. There's some really good books if you do want finance books. Anything by Morgan Housel is going to be great. Same as Ever, The Psychology of Money. Those books are always amazing. As we kind of get out of the books, though, I do want to talk about what the future of financial independence looks like as we look down the pike towards the next generation. Where are we headed? Because if there's one thing I know about Gen Z, your generation, Dominic, is you love to steal what millennials built and then just rebrand it and say that you did it.
Pretty much. Yeah,
Pretty
pretty much.
much. That's
Pretty much.
our MO.
Yep.
But I think that Gen Z, when I look at that generation, they're really doing well at blending financial literacy with lifestyle design and designing that much better than my generation did. Because my generation was all about let's live in a detriment, let's cut our lifestyle to bare bones in order to just take financial literacy to the extreme, but we'll deal with the lifestyle stuff later. And now my generation is kind of realizing that that shouldn't have been the goal. The goal should have been, I don't think that anyone's going to reach financial independence after 10 years and be like, man, if I went a little bit harder, I could have done it in 9. Or if you enjoy the journey and it takes you 12 years rather than 11 years, I don't think anyone's going to be like, man, I did it stupid. I should have hated my entire life in order to make it here 6 months earlier. Because the nature of compounding is that it just kind of happens in the background. You set up the systems and you get the hell out of the way. So much of this is systematized. It's a lot easier. And something that I see with the next generation is they're going to be more creative, more flexible, more values based as they approach work. Not just looking at it as I need to escape this, but how can I allow my work to allow me to live the best life that I possibly can?
I love that. I think it's the courage to chart your own path, right? And I know a lot of people who work full time, work part time, right? Sometimes the part time workers, they love what they're doing a lot more, right? Because those off days, they get to actually sink their teeth into stuff that matters versus the people who work full time. And the people that work full time, well, they are sinking their teeth in when they can because they have an end goal and it's all about living life on your own terms. And I think that's what's most inspiring. And I can see why those mindset books really shifted your perspective in this way, right? Way more than the finance books. Because at the end of the day, this is a personal finance we're talking about. It's personal. And most of it comes from the choices we make or the choices we don't even realize we make. So I could definitely see why those books would really impact you. And yes, anything Jocko Willing, awesome, embrace the suck. Um, if you please read those books and then come back because what I just said, it's a reference to the book. It's not anything weird. So anyway, but what are some other things, some closing thoughts, some takeaways, anything else you want to kind of instill in our listener on their next step?
Yeah, I think that as we open the podcast with the question, is FI dead? And I want to say I think FI is evolving. And I think the next generation of people that pick up the FI mantle are going to be looking to live well earlier, not just retire earlier. How can I live well sooner? And I think that as we kind of move forward, and this is what we try to create here at the FI Guys, is how can we make this community focused, sustainable, and collaborative? And I think that is what's going to shape FI 3.0 is how can we do this in a community setting? Because financial independence used to be a solo journey. And if there's something I've learned from doing jujitsu is that it's never a solo journey. No one gets here alone. Like nobody listening to this podcast, no one in history has ever willed themselves into existence. We're all brought here by causes and conditions outside of ourselves. And the only reason you're listening to this podcast is because somebody took care of you at some point. And that is pretty damn cool. So we need to take that community, that tribe, and bring that into financial independence, that you're not alone here, that we can all do this together. Because I'm going to say that financial independence is in no way dead. In fact, I'm going to say that it's decentralizing away from a few to the many. And the more people we get on this boat, the more we can start this movement and really actually help change the world, change the trajectory that we're moving in. Because from what I see from the outside is that we're moving towards a cliff pretty damn rapidly. A fiscal cliff. We're talking about world wars. We're talking about civil wars. All of these things are happening. And I think it all has to do with economics. So if we can understand that we can take control, we can move into a new financial independence, hybrid, digital, a deeper way of looking at things. Because it's not about quitting the system. It's about building our own system. our own system that actually works for us, not for somebody else. The next generation won't be chasing financial independence, retiring early. They'll be customizing it to themselves. And I already know that the younger generation is likely just going to rebrand it with a new name, exact same tenants, and just improve some of the past mistakes. And I welcome that. I am so curious to see what the next financial independence is going to be called. Maybe we'll be the guys that come up with it, but probably not. I'm too set in my ways.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Hey, you're on fire right now. I've been waiting all podcast to say it, but you're on fire right now. Uh, I'm looking forward to the rebrand, though. Looking very much forward to the rebrand. Any other things we can kind of go over to really set this in motion for the people?
Yeah, let's go with some practical takeaways
Okay.
and some action steps for our listeners. So, for our listeners, I would go back and listen to episode 100 and then go to episode 110 and start the FI crash course if you haven't done that. Because you really need to redefine your financial independence numbers around your values, not just your expenses. And that's where we created the whole financial independence course. That's why the first 2 episodes is all about you, not about the numbers. It's about you specifically. We need to be able to build more flexible income streams that don't just drain your energy. Because yes, things have changed. We do need to update with the times. Things are not as easy as they were in 2009. I 100% agree with you. And we still have to try. We still have to be able to get there no matter what. Focus on freedom as your metric, not some net worth. That might mean your time, your energy, your alignment on what you do. But if you're just chasing a number in a bank account, a number in an investment account, I promise you, you will never get there because the number will change the moment you achieve it. But I think we all need to become better as a community in celebrating micro financial independence milestones because too many people feel like they're losing until the day that they reach their number. And then the day they reach their number, they still feel like they're losing because the feeling didn't change. We need to celebrate the wins. We need to stop chasing early retirement and start living intentionally right freaking now because it's available to you right now. So my final thought is maybe financial independence didn't die. Maybe it just stopped being about retiring early. It's not about leaving work. It's about living with purpose. FI is evolving. It's not ending. And that's good news because freedom isn't something you wait for. It's something you design every day.
I love that. With that, we got to end on that one. That's beautiful. Couldn't have said it any better. It's the Five Guys podcast. We'll see you guys back here on Friday. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, share with a friend who deserves a prolific moment in their week. We'll see you then. Later, guys.
Later.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor. It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.